Is that us on? Right, I think Vicky is now recording. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jenny Campbell. I am Chief Executive of the Resilience Engine, and in partnership with the Academy of Executive Coaching, we're delighted to bring this webinar to your attention. We have scheduled this for an hour. We expect to run, if you like, the main part of the webinar in sort of 30 to 40 minutes, and then take your questions. Please be familiar enough about where the chat room is for those questions. You can press Alt-H for it, Alt for H for hello. There are quite a few of us online today, so we don't expect you to be able to sort of chat easily, but you know, depending upon how much time we have, we might be able to unmute you. If anyone isn't on mute, perhaps I can ask you to do that. I think you all are now. I think Vicky's fantastically controlled our webinar here. So Vicky Routledge from the Academy of Executive Coaching is also joining us. To this webinar. We run the Resilience Engine Accreditation Programme starting in January each year, and it's a 6 to 8 month programme. And we are asked often by people about actually what is the difference between resilience coaching and normal coaching. And this webinar aims to help you with that, to understand it, and to dig in a little bit behind our 10 years of research into this field and why it's so relevant for you in your coaching work. Any of you who are working within an organisation as an internal coach or internal organisational development professional, this is also extremely relevant. So those who are coming into the programme, there are a mix of people, coaches, external coaches, they can be working with anybody. We have some people who are working with executives, senior execs, team coaches. We have some people who are working in the third sector. One of our accredited practitioners works with Men's Shed, for example. So, you know, in a much, much different situation than the executives. We have internal coaches and internal OD people, and we actually have some people who are, if you like, normal managers. So very interestingly, you don't need to be kind of all buttoned up and fully coach-fledged. You know, you can come in from a different background. May I just ask a favour, if anyone isn't on mute, to put themselves on mute just while we are doing this part of it. I can hear somebody chatting and a bit of background noise, so it would be really helpful just to put yourself on to mute. First off the batch then, let me get to this, is, are you already coaching in resilience? Are you already coaching in resilience? So if you think you are, would you please put into the chat room an answer of yes? Okay. Fantastic. So we've got some answers coming in. There's 3 or 4, yeah, 5, 6. Many of you are already coaching in resilience. And some of you may be a no. So anyone knows, also put in a no into the chat room, please, just so I get a feel for what you're thinking. Yeah. Okay, quite a few no's coming in. In fact, more no's than yeses, which is very interesting. There's a set of words here that mean something to you in either of your responses, either a yes or a no, and it's around. Yeah, maybe is a good one, Helen. It may you know, it will depend very much on what your definition is of resilience and whether you're actually active as coach as well, but particularly around resilience. I want to offer you this. If you're working in any of these areas, you're already doing the work of some of the work of resilience coaching. So self-acceptance, for example, it's one of the inner parts of the resilience engine. And most of coaching actually is building awareness and acceptance of context, acceptance of different situations. So very interestingly, you probably are all already doing that work. You may not be explicitly naming it as resilience coaching, but you're already in the work of resilience. The others are very specific. Energy, it actually is a core part of resilience. That's anything from physical, mental, spiritual energy, not just religious, but rather what inspires you in the day, your social and emotional energy. Anything around that is actually resilience building. In fact, resilience and energy follow the same ups and downs. So if your energy is low, your resilience tends to be drained. If your energy is high, it's resilience enhancing. Mindfulness, I don't know how many of you are mindfulness practitioners or know something about it. It's very much of the moment, taken out from the Buddhist context and put into a secular context. And it's really all about being present with compassion and curiosity. But more than that, in fact, resilience relies on being able to be present no matter the context. And many people come to that in different ways. So you could like walking the dog. You could be doing yoga or Pilates. Some people craft. Some people just like silence. But that ability of extending your muscles to actually be able to be present in the moment moves you from a frame of reference which can be quite rigid, and in fact the antithesis of resilience, to widening it out. Lastly, values and goals. So any value work, any of you who are in kind of more deep work with your clients, the good and bad of their judgments in life and how they are about themselves and about other people. And indeed, the last one is everything to do with goal focus, which is, of course, the heart of the GROW model and where coaching originally started off. So I wonder whether that might have changed your views for all the no's, where you have thought you've not been in it, you already are a bit. And that's kind of normal coaching world. Now, if we take it to the term a resilience coach, I wonder what you might think about these questions. I'll just let you read them. And I would invite you, as you're reading that, to notice which ones you are most curious about. It might be about your client's capacity, and we'll go on to explain why that's so critical. It might be just that everything is around stress, and actually you might be stressed in your practice. You might be stressed because of the context of your life or whatever, and the impact that that actually has. Often we are working really in change as coaches, and we can be very, very high, the client says, and indeed seems incredibly committed to change, and yet it doesn't happen. Very interesting work. Then some people who might be working systemically, you will know what that second penultimate question is about. How does it all work together? And it's a question that often comes up if you have people in the generations from about 40 onwards? How can I have, maybe you would describe it as life-work balance, how can I be the best in everything I can be? Do I have to perform always at this level? What about time for more creativity? Anything like that is a holistic or systemic frame, and resilience is a systemic thing. And the last one is about yourself, and we work a lot as coaches on ourselves. We work in terms of our understanding, our processes, how can we enable the client. Most people, I think, are supervised now and absolutely place a lens of learning into their own practice. But actually, the world of coaching often places the light, if you like, onto the client's agenda, rightly so. The work of resilience coaching takes into account that the light shines equally on both of you. Okay, how you are and how you show up in coaching, and particularly with any client, will impact the resilience of the relationship between you, and it will impact, therefore, the work that you are able to bring to your clients. So it's really interesting. There is a massive focus on you and the impact that you may have. And of course, your own resilience is part of that. So having seen some of these questions, can I ask also that you just give me a yes or no? Has that changed your views of what resilience coaching might encompass? Yes, if it's changed your views, or no, if it's not. So quite a few yeses, a few nos. Lovely. So already, I mean, we've got quite a few saying, yeah, this is potentially new stuff. For those of you who are no's, you may be in the depth of resilience coaching itself, or indeed you may know that, but not know how to. And of course, that's the bread and butter of the Resilience Accreditation Programme. So thank you very much for that. So to the actual programme itself, the key is, if you like, at the end of this, you can call yourself a resilience accredited coach, and that's really clear. There are three main outcomes. One is you're a lot more rigorous. Two, you work systemically. And thirdly, you really understand your own impact and therefore can choose much more about your own state and how to enable that in your clients or the work of their clients. So sometimes, for example, we can feel very busy, our clients are very busy, and systemically, of course, we can create a lot of busyness together. Sometimes it's about you choosing something that is about simplicity, and enabling ease in your clients may be a core part of resilience work. In order to do that, you need to know and be able to switch that on like that. Okay, so it's your flexibility, etc. within that. So that's the three main outcomes I would say that people feedback. Of course, there's lots of know-how to. Of course, there's lots of specific kind of depths of experience. And I want to share a couple of case studies with you this morning. But that's the kind of top line stuff that people get out. The programme is based on 10 years of research. So I have been researching since 2007, and I run a little research consortium. It took a couple of years to do the initial part, another couple of years of validation of that, and the resilience engine model got born from that period. We also had another model which we've now thrown away because our current inquiry is a continuous one. It's action inquiry. We build resilience insights, research insights every year. And we now have another model which has replaced the resilience equation since 2012 called the resilience dynamic. They form the core part of the accreditation programme, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about them. But we are pretty ongoing, actually. We are Investigating team and organisational resilience is very, very messy. I've got about a year's worth of data to analyse. It's really rich stuff, and it isn't obvious actually what the results are, and our initial hypothesis and all that kind of stuff is way out the way. So we are really building from an emergent kind of idea. For those of you who may be doing research yourselves, we use a number of different methodologies. The primary one is grounded research, grounded theory, and then we use situational analysis in our most recent work. At the beginning, we also use structured interview. So that's where our research sits, and we have these two key models. The first is the resilience dynamic. Some of you may have come into an earlier webinar this year about why resilience is so relevant, and we did explain some of this. I'm going to repeat some of that, so bear with me. So the resilience dynamic explains what resilience is. And you'll see underneath that title, it's our ability to reshape. In fact, it's our capacity for change. Now, given that most of coaching, I would argue all of coaching, is really about enabling some kind of learning in order to change, then this is at the heart of coaching. The resilience dynamic shows three core states of resilience: break even and breakthrough, that you can see on your screen. I'll explain the fourth one in a minute. Breakdown coincides absolutely with a clinical breakdown. It's where somebody cannot access their resources at all. It's a catastrophic inability to access your resources, and at that point you need help. Interestingly, it's an area where you can coach from, although some of you may find that odd because it tends to be in the world of therapeutic, of therapy and our therapeutic colleagues. However, it's a very coachable place, in fact. Break even, and most of the population, of the working population, sits around here. Coping or bounce back. Coping, one side, is nearer to breakdown, and bounce back where, if you like, you rise to the challenge and then you might get tired again. You rise to the next one, and then there's a consequence of tiredness. So the line of bounce back is up and down. Often the world in which we operate in sits around that break-even stage. There is another level of resilience where you have the highest level of sustainable performance, and that's what we call breakthrough. The line between them, a technical term, is, we call it the whoosh, because it definitely feels like that, both going up it especially, and also unfortunately going down it. So breakthrough is where somebody is resourceful, adaptable and energized no matter the context. They have the highest ability to absorb and to enact and to lead, in fact, change. They are resolutioning all the time, so that undo, redo is relevant there. And in all of that, it obviously moves up and down, okay? So your resilience today will be affected and will have potentially minor incremental change. Last week, it might have been completely different. 3 months ago, it might be completely different again. You might be in more than one state at in any one day, depending upon the context, okay? So resilience is quite a dynamic thing, and we call it, really, it's about data rather than it's actually good or bad, which contextually can be quite interesting. Let me explain just the last state, fragmentation. This came out a few years ago. We recognize that pre-breakdown, there is a breaking up stage, fragmentation, but people can pull back from that and shift towards coping again. So there can be quite a lot of movement between coping and fragmentation. And in fact, it can deliver quite a lot of stress, but it's great in the world of coaching to help somebody cope better. It is a healthier state to be in. So we use that as a map, the resilience dynamic, within the accreditation programme, and you really start to get into how would you know. What are the implications of that? How can I actually coach knowing that? How can the client actually review and potentially reframe who they are or what they're about according to that definition? The next model, the resilience engine, is the depths. It's how to build resilience. And although your resilience, each one of you, my resilience is quite personal, we can actually language that in a common way. There are three major components, as you can see. The two outer pink ones are the sort of stabilizing factors. One is your inner resources. We call it the inner power pack. It's kind of what the potential of your resilience is. The other side is an external goal focus, and it's actually about meaning, making meaning day to day. And the third one, which is the cog in the middle, is the thing that drives the engine. So unless there's fuel in the tank, the engine doesn't go anywhere. It might have all the potential in the world, it might have a direction, but unless you've got adaptive capacity, you won't go anywhere. And we explore the components of all of that together in the accreditation programme, and how these two, both the map of what resilience is and then the implications and where to focus on in the resilience engine. So for example, if you're coping or not coping well, it's likely that your energies are very low. That's in adaptive capacity, but also you might be hooked by certain things within the inner resources. If you need to please somebody, for example, or if you need to please generally in the world, you are hostage to that, and you are unlikely to actually be at the highest level of resilience possible. On the other hand, if you've got a high-performing client, again, you may come in an adaptive capacity. It's often the one that is the starting block because people are very tired these days. You can come in an adaptive capacity, but actually it might just be about alignment across that whole engine. So it isn't one thing. It's more about how they shift. We've got a little animation that shows, for example, if the cogs are all slightly different sizes, and for example, we're overpowered but under, we don't know where we're going, the thing falls apart. Or if we're underpowered but with a big hairy goal, we're underpowered. So you're overpowered, underpowered, not aligned, and the nuts and bolts of the engine fall off. So the whole idea behind this is a systemic integrative model that helps you as a coach navigate on behalf of your clients, and in fact, depending upon the context, you may show and explore through the lenses of both of these models directly with your clients, so they get to know these models as well. The bottom line about some of that is it's a measure of our capacity for change. It's dynamic, it's learnable. The good news is anybody can learn this. It's integrative. We have data on how to enable it, and we also, interestingly, have data on what the key barriers are and how to spot them. Okay, and at the end of the day, we've got both a synergistic relationship in our work with well-being and performance. So if you're a performance coach, this is relevant. If you're about the health of people, this is relevant. If you're about people feeling at ease, this is relevant. If you're feeling, if your work is around change, this is relevant, etc., etc. After a while, you become a resilience freak. So excuse me if I sound like I am, but I do see the world a lot through resilience lens. Before I go on, I wonder whether there's any direct questions that we can start to log. So if you've got direct questions, we won't be able to answer them all today. We will follow that up if there are too many, but already you may have questions coming from these models. Please put them into the chat room. I'll be able to pick them up in the next couple of slides as we go through. So do feel free to pose any questions into the chat room that you might have at this stage. I'm going to carry on, but you might be thinking as I'm doing it and switching slides. So do please get any questions into the chat room. We don't see any at the moment. I may have flummoxed you all by talking for quite a lot about these research models. Let me explain through the resilience dynamic a couple of case studies. I've actually been supervising one of the people going through the accreditation programme from this year who was late in submission. Normally you would submit latest by August, but for their own resilience they decided to delay, and I've just been supervising them this morning. I want to explain that case. The client is a principal of a school. It's a large school. This client is a smart person, female. The school has had difficult academic results. The governors and board are not happy, and there's a lot of pressure on the principal to up their game and pull the finger out of the bag. Right? So difficult feedback, difficult results, and the principal is really not used to it, okay? And they are a bit rocked. They are coping with that situation. And in fact, this is the zone where they're coping and not coping sometimes, where there's the highest stress. Their stress reaction can actually cause a fight, flight, freeze, or appease. You may be very familiar with that. And in this case, it's a freeze reaction. This person also has a major fairness driver running. And they've probably been taught that to be fair means to treat people equally. They've got very caught by this because as a leader, of course, we don't give equal treatment. We may give fair treatment, but we don't give equal treatment. That we don't give 5 sweets to the same, 5 sweets to you and 5 sweets to you. It isn't as simple as that within leadership. So this person is stressed. They are not able to access their normal resources. And in fact, this stress reaction is causing this fairness driver to kind of really take over. And as a result of that, and we know this from data as well, is this person, in the words of my coachee this morning or my supervisee, they deliberate for far too long. Right? We know that procrastination is one of the top impacts of stress, and in fact in our data it comes out as the top. So here we have a client. She's really rocked. She's kind of lost a bit of herself. She has a stress reaction going on. She's seeking to get back in control, but she actually doesn't have the capacity for change. Right? The work of the coach, therefore, is to be able to help the client recognize that and to figure out how to increase the capacity for change. Very initially, it's about being able to be present, calm. It's also about increasing their energy in all of the dimensions that I've already mentioned. And in that increase then, to be able to notice the resources that have been available and not necessarily available at that moment of high stress, okay, because this person has been able to lead, and bring that as well as the conflicting nature of the issue of fairness. So we were talking this morning about which is the least unfair in a particular situation. Is it against those two people, for example, where this lady is procrastinating, or is it to delay the whole system and therefore increase the stress of the whole system? Okay, and that's what's going on. So the coach, by using this lens and by using it as a diagnostic, but also as a sort of roadmap, they're able to really know and be assured of the clarity of work necessary for this client. Okay, the client themselves can understand that cognitively, and together they can create, therefore, how the client can actually navigate, and it means that the work is probably accelerated as a result. Okay, so that's case study number one. Number two is a client of mine that I worked with for many years, high performer, a very senior director of a large organization, and then faced with going into a mergers and acquisitions situation, which they were leading on from their organizational point of view. So when they were in the pink zone up here on the whoosh, basically this person didn't suffer from stress or the stress reaction. They still got lots of stressors, but not the stress reaction. They were very high performing. Okay, the institute themselves was quite high performing. In this situation, over the course of the period, this became a very, very complicated deal, and in fact one that almost kind of really break even, but actually they were oscillating between bounce back and coping. So sometimes they would get through that particular challenge of conversation or difficulty or whatever it was, but if there were too many altogether, they shifted into coping. Okay, this is a shocker for people. It can often happen in career transitions, or when there's loss of job, that people who are high performing in one context actually end up in a coping situation and they kind of lose their resources. So to be able to actually even understand and recognize this, and to recognize the resourcefulness potential of my client and what they could bring to bear while they were in a coping situation, was really extraordinary. So my client now actually really invests in their resilience from a day-to-day. But initially, when I had coached them once before, and I came back in on their request to coach them in this situation, and I had to say to this person, I don't think we can do this work. The goal of X here, of how he was to lead this, is not possible, because my client was really, really tired. And I just said, we can't do this work. This isn't possible. Now, that's a bit of a sort of, you need to have a lot of confidence to be able to say that and to be able to offer that to your client, but almost as a way of being able to kind of name something. If you are resilient yourself as a coach, you can really help enable your client in a very different way. The work that we did was all related to the M&A deal, but in fact, all the way through for a year, we worked on the client's adaptive capacity and across the resilience engine. So how this person was aligning the goals that they had and the goals that the organisation had versus the things that would hold him hostage in the middle of that, some of his hang-ups or hooks, okay, versus his energy, his perspective, and his pacing of his work. So quite complex work, really brilliant, but really helped by the models. So there's a couple of case studies for you, and I want to sort of show through that how you actually work between these two. So initially we work tremendously in the resilience dynamic, and it gives us clues. It gives us clues about where to start off with in the resilience engine. Often it's the adaptive capacity. People are often either tired or they've lost perspective. Okay, so they're really rigid like this, all right, or they're just got overwhelmed, they're just trying to do too much and they're really not prioritizing well enough. Often comes out of stress. So even if they've got the capability of setting criteria for priorities, they don't necessarily enact on them. But from there, often it goes out, okay, to the other. So often you go into the middle and then out to the side, or indeed it might come straight off the bat There may be situation, it's often it's within the resources, and you might that if somebody is in that, they have to go up to the next stage. That might take 6, 9, 12 months for that person. It might take only 2, but it might take a long time. Is that also then helps define what the contract of the work can be. So if the work is apparently to do all of that, but the person isn't coping well, right, and you've only contracted for 3 or 4 sessions in 3 months, it's unlikely you will be able to do all of that. So you can help contract really well and really rigorously with the help of your client. Okay, so that's how we are kind of learning within the accreditation program. The actual program itself, this just explains kind of what's involved. So there's a bit of pre-work. The triangles are the face-to-face bit. There are 2 individual face-to-face days. The rest is all done virtually, so there's lots of supervision and there's lots of group discussion. And the real work is direct client work. So working with an individual and working with the group. And also calling on, if you like, your experience elsewhere of different types of people. So, you know, this is all about building a fluency, and the lenses of the Resilience Dynamic and Engine, they sit on top of work that you already know. You'll have lots of tools that you will use. You'll have lots of processes. You'll have lots of understanding. This is more an integrative set of models to bring all of that together in and on behalf of resilience and of yourself as a resilience coach. So I'm at my 40 minutes. That's pretty much what I was going to explain today, and I'm really open for questions.
Hi Jenny, it's Vicky. There's a couple of questions that are coming on the chat.
That one that you're talking about, is caramels involved in it?
Sorry, whoever is on
that one. The one that we're moving to Newry is me, but the one Kathy organises a falls group as well.
Vicky.
I can't find who's speaking.
Could the lady who is speaking about Kerry, or who just said something about the falls, I'm afraid you're not on mute. Could you put yourself on mute? You're having an additional conversation. No problem for that, but please, you're interrupting the webinar. So we would really ask that you put yourself back onto mute. So sorry for everybody else for that. Okay, so on to your questions. So here's one from Karina. Given that coaching is action-based, wondered how coaching someone with a burnout, for example, actually works. So that's an interesting question about what action may mean and the stage of burnout. So if somebody is not at the point where they can understand their burnout,
Claire,
some of it is purely to help them understand what was going on. Sorry, again, the lady who's just said Claire, could you please put yourself on mute? We're trying to run the questions now, and I'd really love to be able to do that without that interruption. Vicky, if you could possibly help, that would be really brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much. So back to Corinne's question. So there are reasons why that burnout will have happened. When somebody needs to be able to kind of get a grip on that, a breakdown, often it is a question that they really need to understand it. Part of it is understanding. So there isn't much action to take other than you helping the client take responsibility and also act to get help. Okay, breakdown is a place often of loss, and it can really render somebody really, unable. So in that situation, you are able to help them understand it, be quite matter of fact in some cases about it, and help the person understand that they need help, that they need to help themselves in terms of very simple things like their energy. It might be just to sleep well. Okay. and they may start to investigate the why of what's caused the breakdown. And in that, you kind of have many waves. Carol Pemberton's work from Breakdown talks about the narrative wave, and it's very helpful to help them actually go through that process. So I hope that's to some extent, given an answer there. There is action there, but it doesn't necessarily mean enacting on something externally at that point. Okay, here's one from Binda. I'm currently looking into studies in developmental coaching. Talk about the rider and the elephant. How interesting. I'm not sure what the rider and the elephant are, Binda, so I'm not sure how to answer your question. Perhaps you can explain more of what these things are, or indeed, if you wanted to follow up on that, we would write and answer a Q&A at the back end of this webinar to help you. It may take quite a while. It sounds like a really rich metaphor, and I'm very curious. So I will ask you to explain more. Kate, is this training something that you have to have a coaching or support background, or could somebody come into this training with none of these? That depends, Kate. We have two physios who are managers who have come in and successfully passed the accreditation programme. They've been able to demonstrate that they have a kind of people understanding, that they are able to actually recruit people to demonstrate the work through, because that you need to do that, etc. So totally able to take that offline if you want. Mandy Golly will be able to help you, and Mandy's details are up on the screen as you talk. How much is it? That's a really easy question. Thank you very much. It's £1,200 plus VAT, and there are a number of coaching hours, and you get an accredited, you get accreditation from the Resilience Engine. You're licensed in the use of the trademark models and all the materials. You join a community of practice. There's almost 40 people by the end of this year who will be accredited in the UK, only a couple of people in mainland Europe, and there are a number of hours. I think it's 48 or so. Vicky, can you remember? 48.5 hours that you can put towards any other accreditation, but it is in itself, it's not an accredited programme. So I hope that's answered that one. Yeah, okay, so thanks. Back to Binda. So the conscious and unconscious, totally part of the programme, Binda. If you know of any of the psychologists' work around biases, and how our rational head, if it doesn't have capacity, actually we can act on biases like present, future, and we're very much more in the present, so that all comes from our unconscious and intuitive mind. So there are many ways in which we go into that, but absolutely taking the whole person is part of that systemic work. So thank you for that. And I've got this lovely other thing yet coming in on the rider and elephant. I think this is an interesting thing about control. Those with the highest resilience are at ease with themselves, and they seek control for the things they control, and they let go of the control that they, of things that they can't. If you are seeking control like this, you can be very rigid in it, and it is actually negating of resilience. So in fact, there's a thing about enabling your client, whatever stage they are at, to be at ease within that. Okay, so there's very little about forcing. And I think that's really interesting around, again, it's the antithesis of mental toughness, that sort of thinking. So, I'm not au fait with the rider and the elephant as a metaphor, but I think if there's anything about controlling and forcing, I think we unpick that within the accreditation programme itself. Okay. Yep, so Corinne, about the 3-year license, very straightforward. The Resilience Engine owns the trademarks all over the world for the resilience dynamic and model, and some of the tools and techniques that we use underneath that. You are granted legally a license, a renewable license for 3 years. After that 3-year period is up, you know, you just have to show that you have where your practice is, and you know, that you're continuing to invest in your own resilience, if you like, and then it's renewed again for another 3 years. So some people are coming through that process right now, and in fact we're potentially going to introduce the idea of biannual CPD events for people to make it easy for them. Any more? So I'm allowing, you two want to be able to chat with one another. Vinda and AG473HG, you're most welcome. I'm sure you can put into the chat room to you individually and share one another's contact details. We hold all the people who have become Resilience Accredited, Resilience Engine Accredited. There are a couple of other people who don't offer an accreditation programme but offer training, so that could be different. So we don't hold the register of those, Kate, but if you are looking for people to help within your organisation, for example, we could help you with that. I think the adaptive capacity will not necessarily fit so directly onto the Resilience Engine. Okay, so there's conscious and unconscious in all of that across the whole border there. So any more for any more? I'm aware of our time, it's 10:02. I'm not seeing any more questions. I just want to offer you this last piece here for yourselves. As coaches or managers or OD practitioners, we use this very simple metaphor. Resilience is like a river. When the river is high, the water whooshes over the rocks of the river. It is not taken off course, it's healthy, it's flowing. When the river is low, the rocks appear huge. They are out of perspective. The water bangs into the rocks and it feels it more. It can be diverted off course. Sometimes in our coaching world, and indeed for ourselves, we can be hitting a rock again and again and be concentrating so much on the rock. Actually, some of the work may be much simpler if we just raised the level of the water in the river. Okay? Sometimes that rock might actually not be very important. Sometimes it might be, but from the perspective of a high river, it's actually much easier to see the wood from the trees and maybe how to shift that rock out of the river. So I use this metaphor for all my clients. You could use it for yourself today. Resilience can be used as a barometer for how you're going to act in the day, and you could just be saying, how is my resilience river today? And as a result of that, compensating, managing, changing how you are today. Because if your responses are as if your resilience river is low, you can let yourself off the hook, right? That's not the response you should be thinking about. Actually go out and do something that's really good for your resilience. And the quickest way to do that is not all of it, but the quickest way to do that is to figure out how to get more energy on that moment in that day. Okay, so using it as a barometer and also using it as a sort of developmental diagnostic tool is really helpful. So I offer you that today. I hope it's been really, really useful. Yeah, I'm on the book. I am on the book. I'm on, actually somebody came out on this fairness thing. I have quite a lot of data on fairness, and that's probably my 4th book. So I'll get to it. So I'm very much wishing you well. If you have any other questions, what I suggest is you put them into the chat room now. We'll just close on that. And I will take that away with Vicky, and we'll ensure that we are answering all of them for you. Please do, if you have any further questions or you're interested in joining us, go into Mandy Golly at the Academy of Executive Coaching on the details that you can see on your screen now. So thank you very much, and may your resilience be with you.
Jenny, thank you very much on behalf of AOEC and everybody here today for your time and expertise. This is wonderful. I have made a note of people's questions. Karina, I have picked up on yours, so we'll follow up on that, and I will send everybody a copy of this recording.